Oh, you can hear me now?
Yes, very clearly. Thank you.
Okay, good. Unfortunately, I seem not to be able to connect to the video conference, so I'm only on the audio part. For me, it's important that you have access to the video part, since I'm going to show you a couple of slides. So I will try to explain them in any case. The first one is, let me say as an introduction that I have been inspired a lot by Gary and Winston's article, New Paradigm for Global Rule of Law. And I regard what I'm going to say as, let's say, comments in the margin, but it might relate to what you guys have written in your article. And my first just warming up slide here is about a kind of definition of rule of law. Of course, there are a lot of different ways of approaching a concept like rule of law, as we have just heard by Emil and seen a lot of in the literature. But from a kind of socio-legal point of view, I would expectations of, so to say. To put it simply, we believe that what is said also will take place. Then, if we approach rule of law from a global perspective, we, in the first instance, I think the conventions as creation of international law, and a convention in international law has a long way to travel before reaching the ground, before having consequences for people affected. And I have in my slide here, which those of you who are on video can see, I'm dealing with international, national, micro level. Each of these intention is that the convention should be just translated or transferred from one level to the other in order to implement the political message. But the reality tells us that on each of these levels is undergoing distortion, at least the risk of distortion. There are certain ways of transforming a convention to domestic or national law, which I don't, for time constraints, will go into, but many times you distortions coming up in this field. We face it very clearly, for instance, regulation as well. But perhaps still more important for me to point out is the risk of distortion in the relation between law. I will come back to that a bit later. That is something which is addressed to a large extent by Winston and Gary in their paper, and about the social processes going on. So that's something which you have to take into account, that a law, as Winston and Gary says in the article, is not something which is either created or implemented in a vacuum. It's always a situation where you have pre-normativity to relate to. And the last level, which is also touched upon in Winston and Gary's article, is let's say the individual level, at the individual also of importance for the final result, so to say. This is a way of trying the problem which you face when you think about rule of law on a global scale, in my mind. Perhaps I would, which I don't have on the slide, namely that you have also a kind of international regulation taking place in relation to trade and business, what is called lex mercatoria, something which is, let's say, stimulated and grown out of the necessity for especially multinationals to set up certain game rules in order to create kind of legal certainty or rule of law on an international level. Some people even talk these days about lex vigilatoria, which is about surveillance, and which is related to the new technology which makes it possible for countries and private companies and others survey and control other people. And there seems to be, there are articles written about these things where people claim that this lex vigilatoria is growing and created spontaneously, more or less, by individual actors, individual in the sense of private organizations, public authorities, and so on and so forth. Anyway, my main point is to underline the role of norms in understanding global rule of law, because norms are always operating in between law on a global or a national scale and society. And norms are often a distorting factor, which I said, and to convert that argument into a constructive one, you could say that if you would like to set up a law or strengthen the legal message, the normative content of a specific piece of legislation, important to look at the norms at the normative level, because it's there you mainly have a chance to operate and influence. Of course, many times law can be used, or not many times, but one fundamental idea which we also are dealing with, I guess, within this seminar, is that law is a tool to influence norms and normativity in society. And to a certain extent, you can do that, but many times that is very costly, economic and personal terms. You have to control, implement, and force people in the beginning, at least, before they comply with the law. So I would make an argument and a plea for at normative level in relation to strengthening the rule of law. Take an example, finish with an example. Just before that, I would like, and I feel reason many times to comment on the concept of norms. That's one of my favorite subjects, but beside that, and the reason why it's one of my favorite subjects is that in the literature, sociology, anthropology, ethnology, etc.,